Welcome to our set review for the new Alchemy cards. Alchemy, for those that have not been keeping up, is the new digital-only Magic the Gathering format that is coming to Arena, that not only is bringing with it a variety of direct-to-digital cards that aren't quite feasible in the paper design space, but more importantly, it's also bringing with it rebalanced cards from existing standard cards. So Alchemy will not be having bans like we've grown used to in typical standard. Instead, it's going to make cards that are potentially too strong a bit worse. So Alchemy is going to be kind of a brewer's paradise, it sounds like, both from the perspective of getting more cards to work with, but also from the perspective of the power level of the top decks is going to be pulled down, which means making new decks that can compete will likely be easier. Now, if you're a paper boomer who isn't really interested in this, I feel for you. Your opinions and feelings are valid, but I also don't give a shit. Close this video and go watch some paper boomer content. We're embracing the future here in Hoaglandia. Let's check out some sweet digital cards, huh? Unexpected conversion. Draw 2 cards. Then you may exile an instant or sorcery from your hand. If you do, search your hand or library for any number of cards with the same name, exile them, and then shuffle. Seek an instant or sorcery for each card exiled from your hand this way. You may exile an instant or sorcery from your hand. If you do, search your library for any number of cards with the same name and exile them. And then seek an instant or sorcery. This is a weird design. Okay, yeah, that's a neat perspective. It can get rid of dead cards. Yeah, it's kind of like sideboarding mid-game. Yeah, and you can exile extra copies of the thing from your deck that you exile from your hand, so that way you don't re-seek them, right? Yeah, it's unmoored ego for your wrong half. Yeah, like you're playing a control mirror game 1 and you like take all your copies of removal spell out of your deck and then seek other cards that are relevant. Or you're playing against an aggro deck and you cut some other card advantage and then potentially draw more removal. So yeah, it's a really neat design. And this is the type of thing where, like, this is a good example of the digital design space that I really like to see Magic exploring, where this card is technically feasible in paper, but it's like just clunky enough to do in paper that you wouldn't want someone to have to do this. Yeah, so this is an excellent best of 1 card, but honestly, the power level seems reasonable. Like, a divination on its own is a close to playable effect in a lot of standard formats, and this is that plus, right? How would you implement Seek in paper? You reveal cards from the top of your library. You do the same thing, only it's public information. So you wouldn't be able to do it privately, but you could do it publicly. So, like, reveal cards from the top of your deck till you find an instant or sorcery, put that one into your hand, shuffle the rest back into your deck. It's not exactly the same, but it's close, but it would be clunky and awkward to do. By the way, this is going to be a little bit different than my normal set reviews. Normally, we focus on just constructed playable cards. Most of these cards seem like they're potentially constructed playable. So we're going to be talking about absolutely everything today that's coming in the Alchemy set. So let's continue. Tireless Angler. Whenever an island enters the battlefield under your control, draft a card from the Angler's Spellbook. Does anybody know offhand, what does draft a card mean? Is this our version of Discover? Does it, like, show you 3 and you pick one? Oh, 3 randomly. It is exactly our version of Discover. Got it. Sweet. The quality range of the cards here is wide. I said most of these could maybe be constructed playable, then I'm going to tell you that this one's probably not. I'm going to say this one's probably not. It is specifically not a basic island, but we also, like, don't have shocklands and stuff in standard, and I don't expect something with this stat line for this cost to be playable in historic. So I don't think this card is likely to be very good. Conjure a duplicate of each of up to 2 target non-token creatures you control into your hand. There's got to be some kind of sweet combo with this, right? And something to note here too, conjure means you create a copy of the card, which gets treated like a card everywhere. So this is not making tokens. It creates new magic cards in your hand that can go to anywhere. They can go to the graveyard, they can be shuffled into your library, they can be cast, they can go to exile, etc. And they continue to exist. Ward 1. When Protector enters the battlefield, each other giant or wizard you control enters the battlefield. Each other giant or wizard you control, each other giant or wizard in your hand perpetually gains Ward 1. Okay, sweet. Like, we've played some blue-red giants in Standard, and the stat line on this is pretty good, right? Like a 3/4 for 3. And, like, the Giants deck in Standard, when we played it, felt like it was, like, maybe one more good threat away from being playable. And this could very easily be that threat between the stat line for the creature matchups and the ward protection for the non-creature matchups. You know, the average removal spell costs 2, so if you want to kill this with a 2-mana removal spell, you got to pay that Ward 1, so it trades even on tempo. This card is what I'm really excited about. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top 2 cards of your library, put one of them into the graveyard, your graveyard. Whenever a creature is put into your graveyard from your library or hand, it perpetually gains. When this card leaves your graveyard, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token that's tapped. This is awesome. We've played the Sultai Retirement Home deck, the Sultai Self-Mill deck. Is another one of those decks that, like, felt like it was really close when we played it in Standard. And this is a card that could potentially put that over the top. And that's what I'm really excited to see with these supplemental cards from Alchemy. It feels like they're going to get to add cards to these archetypes that are really close to being playable. And between pulling the power level of top decks down with nerfs, as well as adding key cards to potential existing archetypes that were close, it feels like we're getting a lot of variety, or at the very least things to explore for a while, which is great. This card could potentially be sweet in Historic with things like Scrap Heap Scrounger and others as well. Oh god, it's just good with Cauldron Familiar. Okay, so maybe we're gonna have to explore Cat Oven with blue cards. Yeah, I can see that. This would be gross if you can get it onto Cauldron Familiar, for sure. For sure. 4, 3 for 4. So, chat, for people that are saying it's only from library or hand, sure, you have to mill the cat or discard the cat, but at that point, it gains whenever this leaves your graveyard, make a 2/2. So you're right, you can't sack the cat while it's in play, but it's perpetual on the card. So, like, you get the cat into the bin some other way, and then you loop it and make 2/2s. Okay, Obsessive Collector. Ward 2. So if they want to target it, they got to pay 2 more. Whenever Obsessive Collector deals combat damage to a player, you may seek a card with mana value equal to the number of cards in your hand. Pengu Power, Mycelium Dad, thanks for the resubs. Red Lord Donkey Punch resub a little bit ago as well. And thanks for the follows, the folks that are new here. This is a really neat piece of card advantage. And again, like, the downside of a card like this is normally it just dies to a removal spell and you lose tempo. But again, the Ward 2, just thinking about your baseline of the average removal spell costing 2 mana, this card trades tempo even on mana when it gets Doombladed, and when it doesn't get Doombladed, it's gonna draw a lot of stuff. Yeah, and if your hand's empty, it's gonna draw you lands. So if you have cards in hand, this card gives you interesting decisions too about how you can think like, okay, how am I supposed to sequence my turn, assuming that this card's gonna connect with my opponent? Because, you know, how many cards you have in hand when you hit with it will be a real consideration based on what you're trying to seek for when it connects. Decent stat line. People talking about spirits in Historic. I think both the lack of flash and the fact that this doesn't get hit by collected company probably means this is not historic playable. I wouldn't be surprised if people try it, but I'd be kind of surprised if this is historic power level. Counter target spell. Seek a card with the same mana value as that spell. This is like kind of narrow. It encourages kind of interesting deck building where like you want to have a variety of CMCs, but remember, you're seeking something with mana value equal to what the thing you're countering is, so you're not going to have a ton of control over what you're getting. Maybe, I don't know, 4 mana for a counter spell and a control mirrors a lot. I'd kind of be surprised if this one's good enough. At 3 mana, this would be busted, but at 4, I wouldn't be surprised if this doesn't do a whole lot. So, Seek means it chooses a card randomly from your deck that meets the condition. So you counter a 3 mana spell, you're going to get a random 3-cost card from your deck that your opponent doesn't see. So it does not reveal it. Yes, it's kind of counter spell draw card, which at 4 mana that effect usually isn't good enough. Geist of Regret. 4/5 for 5. This is a thick lad. Flying. When it enters the battlefield, put a random instant card from your library into your graveyard, and then put a random sorcery from your library into your graveyard. When you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your graveyard, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for that copy. So this is kind of a sweet... It does block Goldspan Dragon, is notable on the stat line. And this is kind of a sweet build around, right? Like, yeah, you could put 1 instant and 1 sorcery with flashback in your deck, and you play that. This is a card that has the word random in its text box, but it's controlled random. And I love designs like this. This is a card where you get to mitigate the variance that it could have through deck building decisions. So, you know, the question is like, what are the 2 best instants and sorceries with flashback in the format that we can go grab with this? Yeah, it's like Runeterra has a ton of designs like this, and I've always praised them in that game too. Like they're excellent. This is an example of what I would call good variance. It is optional variance that you can deck build to get around. It's a great use of the design space. Yes, this type of card is like a brewer / deck builder stream. This type of design, very, very, very good. Potentially playable, very good design. Jumpin' Jack, thanks for the 10 months. Welcome back. Yeah, storm the festival, and you can storm the festival into it and get more storms. That's a great call. That's probably where you want to start with that card in standard, for sure. Discover the formula. Seek 3 non-land cards, then non-land cards in your hand perpetually gain. This spell costs 1 less to cast. This is gas. Like, draw it instant speed, so you don't have to tap out for it. It draws 3 guaranteed spells, and then it makes everything in your hand cheaper. Yeah, this at instant speed seems sweet. Sweet piece of control card advantage at the top end. Clone Crafter enters the battlefield. Conjure a duplicate of a random creature card from your opponent's library. Wait, what? Into your hand. When it enters the battlefield, conjure a duplicate of a random creature card from your opponent's library. Wow, this is sweet. I was just about to say, Sterk, this is the neatest Elvish Visionary variant I've seen to date. And imagine you're like playing against a control deck that's like mostly Hull Breachers as creatures, right? Or Hullbreaker as creatures. I like it. This one probably sees play. Geistchanneler enters a battlefield. Choose an instant or sorcery card with mana value 3 or greater. It perpetually gains. The spell costs 2 less to cast. Is there some kind of combo we could do in Historic with this? This feels like there's gotta be a Historic card with this, right? Oh, that's a good shout. So this would apply to Flashback as well, right? We were talking about Storm the Festival a second ago with the other card that searches them up. You put this on a Storm the Festival, and then you Storm the Festival on 4, and then you could flash it back for only 8 mana. Yeah, this card and the other blue card with Storm the Festival sounds like a sweet place to start building. Counter target spell. Cards in your hand that share a card type with that spell perpetually gain. This spell costs 1 less to cast. Sure. It's fun. So it might be playable. 3 mana. Cancel's like a pretty decent rate for a counter spell. Like, it will randomly give you some upside. Now, it is noteworthy that, like, you know, you're countering a creature. Your deck might not have a lot of creatures in it. Like, it's fine. This is like another one of those. This card is very good in control mirrors. I agree with that. You know, there's a lot of like cancel plus variations, right? I agree. Cancel variant does cancel things. Yeah. All right. Next group of colors of things. White. Open some tabs, chat. Angel of Eternal Dawn. When it enters a battlefield, it becomes day. It cannot become night. Your opponent can't cast spells with mana value greater than the number of turns they have begun. Anti-ramp. Anti-ramp, anti-werewolves. Maybe some kind of hate card for Historic. It's interesting that it hates on... It's kind of okay against Foretell. Not really though, right? Yeah, this feels like a safety valve. So I don't hate that it exists, but I don't know that I'm envisioning anything specific that this goes into. Phoenix Lance resubbing to the best WotC shill around. Thanks for the tier 2 and thank you for the 4 years of support. And Jumpin' Jack, thanks for the 10 months. This card is gasoline. Vigilance. When Inquisitor Captain enters the battlefield, if there are 20 or more creature cards with mana value 3 or less among your graveyard, hand, and library, seek 2 creatures with mana value 3 or less, put one of them on the battlefield and the other one back into your deck. So this is a collected company that never misses and is guaranteed that one of the 2 hits is a 3/3 with Vigilance. Yeah, this could push humans away from needing to play Collected Company. It could also be playable in addition to Collected Company too, right? Yeah, this one's definitely Historic playable, and it could be That is noteworthy. It doesn't count the battlefield, and it doesn't count exile. So it says 20, so you probably want, what? Like 26 would be my off-the-cuff number. Like 25 to 28. 25 to 28, yeah. And notable here, so this, notably, it seeks 2 things with mana value 3 or less. So it shows you 2 cards, and then you pick which of the 2 to put into play, and the other one goes back. Yeah, this card could be good at making Squirrel Combo consistent too, for sure. It puts 1 back into the library because it just wants you to have choices, chat. This is it reducing variance. So you don't get both of the cards that you see. You get it plus 1 other creature Yeah, noteworthy, this is good with Ephemerate as well, right? So, like, you get things that can blink this. You get to play this with Restoration Angel in Historic and Ephemerate. Like, Resto, Ephemerate, and this card sound like, sound delicious. People will try to play this with Soul Herder. Yes, I agree that people will lose lots of games of Magic trying to play this with Soul Herder. Oh my gosh, chat. It isn't a ratio. It isn't a ratio. You just put this in a Yorion deck, and it's so easy to have like 30 cards that meet your requirement in a Yorion deck. Gosh, my head didn't even go there. Yeah, this card's gonna be sweet and Historic. Yeah, you just play it with Yorion, chat. That sounds great. When Faithful Disciple dies, draft a card from its spellbook. Anointed Procession, Crusade, Authority, Sigil, Glitters. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, so these spellbooks have 15 cards in them. So what are the odds we see a specific card that we're looking for? You're 20%. Right? 15 cards, one that we're looking for, sample size 3. We want one or more. So yeah, so this is how you want to, like, looking at these. So it's draft means you see 3 of these. You see 3 of these cards at random, and then you pick one. So that's why I'm doing this calculation. Let's say I'm only interested in one of these cards. I'm 20% to see the card I actually want in looking at 3. And, like, looking at these, like, some of these are going to be pretty bad generically, right? Like, these cards, for example, kind of need to be built around, even Authority of the Councils, and, like, Sigil is kind of meh. Yeah, so, like, you need to assume, like, let's say there's 5 cards out of the spellbook you're happy with. If there's 5 cards out of the spellbook you're happy with, you're going to be about 74% to see a card that you're content with. So that's probably not awful. So, like, if we count, like, Cleric class is fine, and Angelic Gift draws a card, so it's fine. Glorious Anthem might be fine. Maybe there's 5 in here that we're happy with. But you probably want to be happy with the variety of the things here. This could maybe be good in a specific thing, but in general, you need to be taking advantage of the enchantments that it's giving you. Ethereal Escort enters the battlefield or attacks. Choose a card in your hand. It perpetually gains lifelink. Well, aside from the blatant cash grab that is the fact that this is a mythic rare, this card's probably playable. It is notable that this gives anything in your hand lifelink. So you could give planeswalkers that deal damage lifelink. You could give creature lands lifelink. You could give burn spells lifelink. So there is some flexibility there. This could definitely see play depending on the format. You could give a Star of Extinction lifelink and gain a bunch of life. Conjure a card in your hand named Suntail Hawk. Then if you have fewer than 7 cards in hand, repeat this process. Chat, you want my called shot? If they do a round of buffs to their digital only card, this card will cost 3 or potentially even 2 mana at some point. At some point, this card will cost significantly less mana. So Guardian, even if Evangel? 3/1 for 2. When it enters the battlefield, conjure a card, named it into your hand. Discard that card at the beginning of the next end step. When it enters the battlefield, tap target permanent you don't control. Wait, what? So you just like get endless 3/1s? Yeah, so if you play this on 4, you can play 2 of them. If you play this on 6, you could make 3 of them. And then if you don't use it up, you have to discard it. Discard it at the end of turn. It will be really good with Jeskai Ascendancy. Yes, it's fleeting from Rune Terror. It's a good way to put it. Sweet. Thanks for the follow, Gio. Exam, Dragonite. Is my chat just not showing 3 subs? I'm missing them. Dragonite is coming to Unite, and Unite is being announced as at Pokemon World's $1 million prize pool. I heard that. So apparently they like posted an early press release and then rolled it back. So I'll be interested to see if that drums up some more interest in Unite. Game's real good. Slayer's Bounty. When it enters the battlefield, look at creature cards in the opponent's hand. Whenever you sacrifice Slayer's Bounty or another clue, draft a card from Slayer's Bounty Spellbook. It is a clue. Yeah, this looks like a bunch of playable cards, huh? It's just like a bunch of different removal spells. This is very good. That then makes your clues draw 2. Also, can I get a judge ruling? This is legendary. So, if I play a second Slayer's Bounty, it sacrifices to the legend rule, right? The legend rule is not sacrifice. It's not, the legend rule is not a sacrifice. Okay, thank you. Magic is intuitive and easy to understand. It's a state-based effect, it's not a sacrifice. Sure, it's just treated that way in every other way except the name. Got it. Okay. So you don't want to play multiples, but still works well with other clues. That card is almost assuredly playable. Expedition Supplier. When it or another human enters the battlefield under your control, conjure a utility knife onto the battlefield. This only triggers once per turn. Sure. Yeah, it auto equips, right? This is probably super playable. The auto equip is good. You're just gonna have a bunch of utility knives lying around. Maybe there's some kind of human artifact combo payoff deck. Neat card, neat design. Excited to build around it. Exile all artifacts and creatures with mana value 3 or less. They perpetually gain. This spell costs 2 more to cast. And this permanent enters the battlefield tapped. For as long as each of them remain in exile, the owner may play it. This is neat. Kind of like a cheap tempo sweeper. That's good. This could maybe see play. Neat design at a minimum. When Angel of Unity enters the battlefield or you cast a party spell, choose a party creature in your hand. It gets +1/+1. This card's sweet. The party archetype is one that has felt super close to playable. And again, this is like another one of these designs that like feels like it's being printed to help maybe push that up into playability. You could also just play this in a deck full of clerics. This is also just kind of like a cleric payoff, right? So decent, maybe decent in clerics, maybe decent in party. 1/1 double strike. Spells cast from among the cards you drew this turn cost 1 less. Spells cast from among ones your opponents drew this turn cost 1 more. This is neat. Stat lines may be a little bit weak. Something to consider, the fact that this only has 1 toughness, means that it does die to Spike Field Hazard, which is a pretty commonly played removal spell. Cursebound Witch dies, draft a card from its spellbook. Cauldron, Vengeance, Oven, Cottage, Familiar, Curse of Leeches, Cauldron, Familiar. Hey, chat, you can get Cat Oven back in Standard. This probably isn't very good. This could be cute inside of Historic as a way to get extra redundancy for your Cat Oven decks. So you're 37% to see a cat or an oven with this card. Right, there are 15 here again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yeah, there's 15. So you're 40% to find a cat or an oven. Sure, I said cat or oven, Darth, but you look at 3 cards and then you pick one. So the odds of you seeing either of those to pick one of them to find the one you are currently missing is 37%. Yes, draft lets you look at 3 cards. Target player reveals all cards with mana value 2 or greater in their hand. You may choose a card from among those cards, exile that card. When a card is exiled that way, that player drafts a card from Break Expectations Spellbook. Oh, they're all artifacts. I was like, it doesn't say they can cast a mana of any color. None of these seem particularly scary, right? You're probably pretty happy on average to turn your opponent's best card. Yes, this is probably playable at 1 mana. Yeah, this is probably a playable discard spell. You'll probably die on occasion to whatever you're giving them, but like, I mean, you're gonna get a lot of information, Sleepy Turtle. Like 2 or greater is most of their cards. You're like not gonna know what their lands are, but you know how many lands they have. When a card in your graveyard is put into your hand, conjure a duplicate of that card. What's the best way to enable this? Okay, this is super playable with K command in Historic. That's a good shout. Any other playable cards? Cards like Regrowth, not a good card. What's a card that's already playable that you would play with this? Stop naming your shit cards, chat. Bala Get Recovery, playable card. A Claim to Fame puts it into play, chat. You gotta put a card from your graveyard into your hand. Gutter Bones is a cute shout for Historic. Okay. I like it. So maybe more Historic focused build around. Last Hope is not Historic yet, but hopefully we get it sometime soon. Scrap Heap Scrounger is right to play, chat. Chat, stop, chat, read the card. Read the card, chat. Magic's a lot easier when you read. Literacy is a big step up in power level for Magic. Sap Vitality deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Choose a card in your hand. It perpetually gains 3 attack. Yeah, I can dig it. It's a sweet design. This is a sweet aggro removal spell, right? Yeah, mono black or just black X aggro. This one. I expect this to see plenty of play. This card is Gasoline, chat. I saw this one before. 3-mana enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, make a blood token and conjure a card named Blood Artist. This is an 0-1. Sorry, my thing's kind of off the screen. It's an 0-1, and whenever another creature dies, yeah, puts it right onto the battlefield. It also makes it so when you sacrifice blood tokens, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life. Vampires felt close to playable in regular standard. Vampires is going to be Gasoline. Vampires is going to be Gasoline. Blood Artist was already in Historic, yes. Zetature, thanks for the 22 months. Welcome back. This is sweet. That's right. This one is super good, and you'll play this. You'll probably play this in Alchemy Vampires. Puppet-razer. At the beginning of your end step, exile 1 creature card from your graveyard. If you do, seek a creature card with mana value equal to that mana value plus. Wow. This card is sweet. This is a neat source of card advantage that also makes things... It's like it gets rid of your things that are dead and lets you draw bigger things. Yeah, it's exiling from your graveyard and putting them into your hand. So people comparing this to Birthing Pod, you're silly. Stop it. But this is a source of card advantage, right? And the fact that this triggers a at the end of turn means you can sequence this in a way that you're going to get to guaranteed draw at least one card with it in a lot of situations, maybe more if it sticks around. But I like this design a lot. Seems powerful and is a neat design. Predatory Sludge. All right, chat. It might be a little bit confusing, but this card is now nicknamed Magic Arena. This is when you hear me refer to a card by the name Magic Arena, it's Predatory Sludge. 3/3 with Menace for 3. As Predatory Sludge enters the battlefield, choose a permanent you don't control. When the chosen permanent is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, conjure a card named Magic Arena into your hand. But will foil cards with spellbooks have foils? They should, Sheriff. Playing Magic Arena on Magic Arena. This is interesting. So I have a question for the way this is, and we might, does Paper Magic Judge Rulings apply? Does this card need to still be in play when the card you pick dies? Or can this die and then we kill the thing we picked later and get another sludge? Yeah, it's not 2 effects. It's a delayed trigger, right? The whole effect has no line break, so it's not dependent on the Predatory Sludge still being in play. This card seems pretty reasonable then. Gutmorn Pactbound Servant. 3 mana, 1/3 flying death touch. When it enters the battlefield, each player discards a non-land card. Whenever a player discards a card during your turn, they choose another player. That player conjures a duplicate of that card into their hand that it perpetually gains. You may spend mana as though or mana of any color. This feels like a multiplayer EDH card that accidentally found itself printed onto Magic Arena. I don't know that this seems particularly good. It's a neat design that would be novel if we had 3+ player multiplayer, but in one-on-one constructed, it doesn't seem particularly good. The Last of Mike, thanks for the follow. Is this a hint for multiplayer in Arena? No, not even a little. It is kind of cute that it lets you cantrip your discard spells later. So like if you like Thoughtseize after the fact, sure, you get extra value with this, but I feel like that's probably not good enough. Chris, thanks for the 35 months. Yeah, we criticized a card for being mythic earlier. This card actually feels like a good card to have be mythic because it's kind of a weird novel effect as opposed to this is just an overtly powerful card you need to play in Constricted. Yes, yeah, so when your opponent discards a card, you get a copy, but when you discard a card, they get a copy. So when this comes into play, you and your opponent trade cards in hand is the reason why it's potentially not playable. Hey, thanks for the sub, The Last of Mike. There's a ton of great people you can send those Prime Bucks to every month here on Twitch. Thanks for sending your Bezo Bucks this way this month. Welcome back, Alert. Thanks for the support. Just don't have any spells in your hand, duh. Citystalker Connoisseur, 3/3 for 4, Death Touch. When enters the battlefield, an opponent discards a card with the greatest mana value among cards in their hand, and then you create a blood token. Sure. This is probably playable. Like, it generates card advantage when it comes into play. Getting their biggest card out of their hand guaranteed is nice. Death Touch means you trade in combat, and then blood lets you get to rummage a little bit. Yeah, I think this card's probably playable. Maybe the fact that it's 4 and a vampire means that it competes with the other good 4s, but in a vacuum, this card seems good. The question will be, can it compete with the other 4s we have access to in the format? This card is potentially good if we have ways to blink it, is a good shout. Assemble from parts. Target creature card in your graveyard perpetually gains 4 mana, exile this card from your graveyard, shuffle it into your library, create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. Activate this only as a sorcery. Okay, so here's what I don't understand. Why does it exile the card and then shuffle it back into your deck? Like, I understand what the card is doing, and it seems kind of neat, and, like, could be combo-y. Oh, it stopped people from exiling it in response. Okay, that makes sense. So, yeah, because the exile is before the colon. So if you pay 4, you put it into exile immediately, so that way it can't be like Surgical or Tormod's Cryptid or Lantern. That's fine. They could just put the shuffle as in front of the colon instead of moving its zones twice, but that's also fine. You could shuffle as part of the cost too, yeah. 2/2 lifelink. Damage isn't removed from creatures your opponents control during cleanup step. This probably isn't playable. Maybe this could be good as a card to board in against bigger creature decks, so that way when they're blocking you, they don't just, like, recover their blocks, but probably not playable. When wanted, Cutthroat deals combat damage to a player, exile a non-land card from their library at random. During any turn you attacked with a wolf or werewolf, you may cast that card. Wow! Holy crap. And it gets double strike on the backside? This card is really good. This card is really good. Yeah, I got four mythics earmarked for this one, chat. Tybalt, Wicked Tormentor. 3 mana, throw 3 loyalty, 5 mana Planeswalker. Add double red to your mana pool, and then draft a card from the Spellbook. Until end of turn, you may cast that card. What's our Spellbook look like? It's a bunch of devils. That's great. I really must say, I'm enjoying the flavor. I'm enjoying the flavor of these spellbooks. Okay, so now here's actually one question with this. So this makes 2 mana. How many of these spellbook cards cost 2 or less? 1. This one 2 or less. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, technically. Because remember, conjure cards will go to your graveyard. So the odds of you getting a card that you can cast with the mana that Tybalt makes you the turn you play it on 5 are a little over 87.5%. So there's a good chance this comes down and draws you a card the turn you play it and plus it. Yeah, so it protects itself. Yeah, those are really good odds. Also, pluses to deal 3 to a creature or planeswalker unless they take 3. If they do, you discard a card, draw a card. Create X devils or X's. Okay, yeah. So this is sweet. So you like play this on 5, plus it to 4, have a good chance to cast something that can block, and then the following turn you could make 3 devils and still have a planeswalker around. This seems sweet in like a bigger red deck for sure. A lot of good utility there. Town-razer Tyrant. Enters the battlefield. Target land you don't control loses all abilities except mana abilities and gains at the beginning of your upkeep. Sacrifice. This permanent deals 2 damage to you unless you sacrifice it. This card is fucking hot, chat. I am a little bit bothered by this card. This is a powerful Magic the Gathering card. This card slaps. Yeah, let's blink this one. I want to ephemerate this one in Historic. So this turns off a creature land guaranteed and then slowly kills them unless they sacrifice it. That's delicious. Yes, we're gonna go over the rebalance cards at the end. At the beginning of your end step, each dragon in your hand gains perpetually. This card costs 1 less to cast. Chat, we're gonna get to play tribal dragons, chat. There's so many sweet tribal cards in this card drop. Geist Blaster. Enters a battlefield. If there are 20 or more instant sorcery among cards in your grave, hand, or library, you may discard a card. If you do, seek an instant or sorcery. I guess. It's really weird they picked this to be the face of Alchemy, and it's not a very good card. This could be okay. I guess prowess is a mechanic that's often undervalued. I envision, chat. This is your one shot. I know I said I was done taking Delvers. I will take exactly 1 donation to play this card with Delver of Secrets. 1. You get 1, okay? I said I was done with Delver, but we have a new format. We have a card that's maybe good with it. I will accept 1 submission. Electrostatic Blast deals 2 to any target. When you cast your next instant or sorcery spell, exile the top 3 cards of your library. You may play one of those cards until end of turn. Oh. And this isn't... So, like, you can cast your next instant or sorcery the next turn, right? So, like, you, like, play this on 2, and then on 3, you get to, like, draw an extra card? Yeah, that's gasoline. I want to shock the cantrips. Sign me up. Husker Flush, thanks for the 5 months. And, like, this, for example, is you could theoretically have this card in paper, but tracking when this happens is difficult and messy in paper. But it's very easy for a digital client to do it and make sure that nothing bad happens. So, like, this type of design space, what I'm glad Magic has access to. It's not convoluted, it's not random at all, but it's just difficult to track, so they stay away from them with paper designs. But in digital, it's not a big deal to do at all. Love it. Deals 3 damage to each creature. Choose an instant or sorcery in your hand. It perpetually gains. If this spell would deal non-combat damage to a permanent player, it deals that much plus 2 instead. Sure. Seems fine. Creatures and planeswalkers your opponents control perpetually gain. If this permanent would die, exile it instead. This then deals 5 damage to a creature or planeswalker. Okay. Yeah, like Soul Seer has been a somewhat consistently playable card even in Historic. It's just a 3 mana, deal 5, ignores Indestructible. This is very similar, except it gives you a lot of miscellaneous upside and other things too. Neat. No, Lambton. It chooses an instant or sorcery, right? Choose an instant or sorcery in your hand. Bloodrange Alpha. When it enters the battlefield, choose one. Another wolf or werewolf you control fights a creature you don't control. When you cast your next wolf or werewolf spell, it gains. Whenever this creature enters the battlefield, it fights something. Sure. Maybe a little bit expensive at 4 for the stat line, but neat design, fantastic artwork. Don't mess with the alpha chat. At the beginning of your upkeep, draft a card from its spellbook and then exile it. You may play that card until end of turn. Most of these seem bad. Most of these seem bad. Probably not very good. When it attacks, conjure 4 cards named Lightning. Conjure 4 cards named Lightning Bolt into your library and then shuffle. Oh. 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 That's sweet. I mean, a 3/3 for 3 with haste is like relatively playable. And then you get a bunch of burn spells? Sure. Sure. Burn, baby, burn. Do 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 do. Tenacious Pup. This card's good. 1/2 for 1. When it enters the battlefield, you gain a life. When you cast your next creature spell, it enters the battlefield with a 1/1 counter, trample, and vigilance. That's a good boy right there. This with the red 2-drop we just looked at, chat. You curve this into the red 2-drop, and then it's a 3/3 that draws you a card every time it hits them, and it flips into a double striker. Like, yeah. Like, this card is very good and will be a key part of potentially making Wolves playable. This is, again, not a paper card because your next creature is tracked across turns. It is not impossible to track things across turns in paper, but it is messy at best. And it's the type of design that they don't like doing in paper because paper players have trouble tracking it. It's just you play this on 1, and then on turn 2, your thing is bigger. This card's very strong. Very, very strong. Can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. Enters the battlefield. Creatures you control perpetually gain. When this creature dies, you may shuffle it into its owner's library if it's in your graveyard. If you do, investigate. Yeah. This is sweet. Enters the battlefield creature. And this counts itself, right? Like, at a minimum, this seems good as like an anti-sweeper card, right? You like play this once you have a bunch of creatures on the board, and then they get to draw some cards. I mean, your creatures after don't do anything. It doesn't affect your creatures you play after it. So you have to play your board out and then play this, and then your board is insulated against the sweeper in terms of generating card advantage. Seek a basic land and put it onto the battlefield tapped. Then seek a permanent with mana value equal to the number of lands you control. This is a interesting design for 2 reasons. The first is that you don't get to pick. Seek means it picks a random card that meets the requirement. So you don't get to pick what color you're getting. So you get just like 1 of 5, you know, however many basics you have, you get 1 at random. And then you get a random permanent card with mana value equal to the number of lands you control. So the awkward part about this, 2 awkward parts. The first is you don't pick what color you're getting. So it's not color fixing. No, it is from your library. You seek from your library a random card. Seek is from your deck, get a random card that meets this requirement. The problem with this is in the late game, you're not gonna get a spell with this, right? So like you have like get the can you build her on this though? Kinda. Like the fact that this doesn't cantrip in the late game when you have, yeah, it's equal to the number of lands you control. Yeah, so this is like a sweet Brawl card, because in Brawl your curve can get huge, but like past like 5 to 6 lands, this isn't gonna get anything, right? Definitely a great Brawl card. Probably not a standard card. At least not a competitive. People will brew with this card, but it definitely falls off hard. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. Choose a creature card in your hand. It gets XX, where X is the excess damage dealt this way. Someone remind me, did Blizzard Brawl get nerfed? It did not. Okay, this card's unplayable. Maybe they'll nerf Blizzard Brawl in the next balanced patch, and this will be playable. But as long as Blizzard Brawl is 1 mana, this card's unplayable. Just thoroughly outclassed. This card's a sweet design. 4/4 trample haste for 4 with foretell 6. It enters the battlefield with X counters, where X is the number of turns you've had since you foretold it. So if you foretell this on 2, on turn 6, this will be an 80. Trample haste. So neat design. You can kind of choose how you want this to happen. Love it. This card's really good. 6/6 for 5. When it enters the battlefield, seek a land to your hand. Discard a land. Conjure a card named this to your hand. Oh, wait. It's a different card. You may activate this only when Wrangler's in your graveyard. What's the beast? The beast is something different? Oh, I assumed it was summoning itself. That's still probably fine. So it's a 5-mana 6/6 that draws you a land that then turns a land into a vanilla 5/5. Ravenous Pursuit is an instant, not a sorcery. I'm gonna need a source on that one. You can't just tell me the picture in front of me is a lie without sourcing it. You're right that the card is also missing a rarity. They put it as instant first and then corrected it. Got it. Yeah. Hinterland Chef enters the battlefield, draft a card from its spellbook. It perpetually becomes a food in addition to its other type and gains sacrifice it, gain 3 life. Wait, what? You conjure one of these things and then the thing you're making is also a food? That's great. Oh, that's a good catch. This doesn't get rid of itself. Oh, that's a good catch. So all of your lands are 5/5 for the rest of the game. Yeah, this card's great. I think it was good even if it could only do 1, but you're right. It doesn't get rid of itself or exile itself or anything, right? Yeah, that's great. Good shout. Thank you. Grizzled Huntmaster. This card is just like word mush. When it enters the battlefield, you may exile a creature card from your hand. If you do, you may search your hand and library for any number of cards with the same name and exile them, then shuffle. Choose a creature you own from outside the game. Conjure a duplicate of that card into your hand for each card exiled from your hand this way. It's diarrhea of game words. Yeah. I really don't understand why. I don't understand why this is getting rid of cards out of my library. Can anybody explain that to me? It's like, so you don't have to draw them again? It's so weird that, like, not having to draw a bad card that you're exiling is, like, such a minimal upside for making the card more wordy. Like, okay, I get that. Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, like getting rid of the bad cards is so awkward. Yeah. It's just like the added complexity that adds to the wording is not worth the small upside it gives, and I think they should have just not done that and make the card simpler. So this lets you turn a creature in your hand into a card from your sideboard, which is okay. Probably a fine best of 1 card, probably not quite strong enough to be a best of 3 card, because just like your sideboard slots are valuable and the stat line's only okay. There's a lot of good 3s in standard for green, and this probably isn't better than the other options. When Geistchanneler Alpha dies, seek a permanent card with mana value equal to the number of lands you control. I guess this is awkward like the what's it called is awkward, the land ramp spell where like as the game goes long it's like not gonna draw you a thing. It's a little awk. And the stat line's only okay. Yeah, the equal to is rough. This does encourage you to stop playing lands beyond the top of your curve, which is generally not very good. 3/5 for 4. Reach other spiders you control. Get 1/2. Exile 2 cards from your graveyard. Draft a card from its spellbook. I assume these are a bunch of spiders. Sure. Seems fine. Definitely a brawl card. Originally, it was designed as a blue variant to get rid of weak cards in matchups game 1. So the starting part, removing copies from the deck. Optional came from play testing feedback over other cards you couldn't play yet but wanted to draw later. Yeah. All right. Colorless. Wicker Wing Effigy. 1/4 for 3. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast creature spells at the top of your library. When you cast a creature from your library, it becomes a black bird, has flying, and has base power and toughness 1/1. Neat design, but probably not playable. Stat line's a little weak, has defender. Average creature decks probably have better things they want to do in the 3 slot. Neat design. Equipped creature has trample. When equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, seek a card with mana value equal to the damage. This is cute. Neat curiosity variant. Key to the archive. Enters tapped. When it enters the battlefield, draft a card from its spellbook and then discard a card, add 2 mana and any combination of colors. The spellbook on this one is a banger, chat. Approach the Second Sun, Day of Judgment, Time Warp, Counterspell, Demonic Tutor, Doomblade, Lightning Bolt, K-Grip, Regrowth, D-Spark, Electrolyzed, like they're all... Like, draft a Mystical Archive card. Yeah. This card's sweet. Ominous Traveler. Enters the battlefield, draft a card from its spellbook. That card perpetually gains may spend mana of any color. And when you cast a spell, you may return Ominous Traveler... Huh. Oh, it's a bunch of werewolves and vampires and spirits, huh? And zombie. It's just like all the tribal cards? Interesting. So you could play this as filler in any of the tribal decks? 4 zombies, 1, 2, 3, 4 spirits, 1, 2, 3 werewolves, and 4, it is a little sad. I kind of wish this was a changeling instead of a human. I agree. Forsaken Crossroads. Enters the battlefield tapped. When it enters the battlefield, choose a color. When it enters the battlefield, scry 1. If you weren't the starting player, you may untap this instead. Sweet. Goes second cards are sweet. It's technically color fixing. I like that even if it comes into play tapped because you're going first, it can scry. You can even choose down the line if you don't need the mana. You can scry instead. Sweet, sweet land design for sure. Yitrog. 6/6 menace for 4. Beginning of combat, if Gitrog Horror is untapped, an opponent may sacrifice a creature. If they do, tap it and then seek a land card to put on the battlefield. Whenever a land enters play under your control, it gains perpetually to sacrifice this draw card. Neat. I like it. Destroy all creatures. Creatures in your hand perpetually gain 1/1. Grr. Green. The old green Wrath of God. Yeah, art is beautiful. Does anybody know where can I see all the rebalance cards at, chat? I want to give thoughts on those at the end here. Must be that Max. Thanks for the 13 months. I appreciate it. Anybody have a link offhand? Anybody? Bueller? I am on MTGA Arena Zone, is the website we were currently looking at that has the spellbooks nicely in there with them. Alrin's Epiphany. This is a perfect change. I'm excited for this change inside of both Alchemy and Historic. The fact that they have to pay the premium to get their birds is great. The fact they have to foretell to get the birds is great. A little bit more timing restrictive. Lovely. Perfect. Great space to go with that. Azika's Chariot. The Azika's Chariot change here is my favorite type of rebalance that we'll see with digital-only cards, chat. This is not a nerf. It is a side grade. It is a change that is better in some situations and worse in some others. And I think these are the best types of changes that are possible where you just make the card kind of different, not just strictly worse. Some cards, chat, deserve to be strictly worse. A card like this feels close. Feels close. Faceless Haven. Strict nerf. They took a point of attack off of it. Deal. One of the best creature lands probably ever printed. I think pulling that down seems fine. Goldspan Dragon loses the when targeted, still makes a token on attack. Sure. This makes targeted spot removal much better against it, right? It means cards like Soul Shatter will no longer be a necessity to play because your opponent can't just like play Goldspan on 5 and then negate your negate your removal spell when you target it. Aspirant. Mono White's really strong, pulling down the power level a little bit in this. I would bet this card's still playable in White in Standard at least. Obviously, it is strictly worse than it was prior, but it's definitely a card that deserved to be toned down, I think. Omnath. I think they were being conservative with their changes on this card because people were really hurt by this card when it was Standard and Historic legal last time. But my gut says this is an over nerf. I think just taking it from draw to scry would have been fine. I think I would have left this at 4 mana. Not only does adding the 1 up here make the mana cost look ugly, but I also think it's probably an over nerf. And then the other side of this, chat, they're not just making cards worse and side grading them. They are also taking some cards and making them better. The beginning of your end step, draw a card if your life total is greater than your starting life total. Otherwise, you gain 2 life and scry 1. So they added a scry 1 if you're not drawing a card. Sweet. I'd seen some people tooling around with this card even before this buff, and with the buff, this might be a fine piece of card advantage. Hey, Crimhorn, thanks for the 9 months. I appreciate it. Welcome back. Demi-Lich. We gave it an extra point of power and toughness. Sure. There were some fringe Demi-Lich decks that seemed playable. Making it strictly better can't hurt, right? Druid class. Making the final level up cheaper. Yeah, I mean, Day 9 had been playing a pretty sweet Druid class ramp deck that seemed close to playable, except it had a bad Epiphany matchup, because Epiphany just went over the top of it. Hopefully between Epiphany getting worse and this getting better, something like that could be a format staple. Wizard class. Yep, just straight drop the mana cost. Sure. Can't possibly make this worse, right? 4 mana divination. Whenever you draw a card, you get a 1/1 counter on a creature. Could maybe be fine. We gave this thing trample, and then when you put counters on something, it gives that plant trample till end of turn. These only explicitly affect Alchemy. So Alchemy is a digital-only constructed format. So it will not, people that are playing limited formats for these cards are legal. They'll still be just the Paper Boomer cards. Dear Wizards, it's not too late. There is still approximately 24 hours until your patch deploys. You can add 1 more card to your rebalance buffs. Please, for the love of God, make the party land come into play untapped. Now, I don't want another nerf. I want the party land to be untapped, chat. I just want to have a party in Alchemy, okay? It's all I want for Christmas, Wizards, is a buffed party land. Please, please, please. Wizards, you have no idea how many people have called me a Watsy shill on Twitter since Alchemy was announced. Please do this Watsy shill a favor and give him an untapped party land. What's the party land called, chat? I went to look it up on Scryfall, but I realized I don't know what the name of it is. Base Camp. Yeah, it's literally just makes a mana of any color for party creatures, but it comes into play tapped for some reason. And I'm sure that reason is something stupid related to limited, but there's no reason this card can't come into play untapped. Actual no reason it can't just be untapped.